Well, I'm delighted to do that, but let me say in the beginning, I'm especially thankful to be here with y'all and do this interview today and congratulate you with everything you do. I was born April 4th, 1934 in Conway, South Carolina. And I've got an unusual first name. It's called Danley, D-A-N-N-E-L-L-Y. And I was known as Danley, and I was named Murray from my grandfather, and I'm a Brabham. And that's when I started the first grade in Conway. And later we moved to Georgetown, and throughout my education in Georgetown, from the second grade through senior in high school, I was known as Danley Brabham. Well, Danley is chewed up like a machine. They look at it like it's a wild name. If it's D-O, Donley, they could pronounce it just like that. Danley was Danelli and everything else. So I cut my name to Danny so they could spell it, they could understand it. And some people say, "Are you a Daniel?" I said, "No, I'm a Danley, and you don't understand the language, okay?" And so anyway, we moved from Conway to Georgetown when I was in the second grade and graduated from here, from Winyah High School in 1952. And I was lucky to be in a position where participating in athletics in Georgetown, it offered me the opportunity to have a scholarship to Newberry College. And so that was my journey in getting to the college level. And the thing about growing up in a small town is it's because it's a community effort. People turned out on Friday nights, and it was supported by the community. And when you had the band, the cheerleaders, and everybody coming to see the Gators play all comers, for regardless of where they were from, it was quite a joy to grow up in the Georgetown, and that's why I'll tell you a little later why the book was written, because I don't care whether it's a small community. In Georgetown, the things that you learn, I don't care what level you are, any level, the jobs that y'all do, the jobs that anyone do, there's a certain level that the principles there are you can do the best you can. Are you honest? Are you a team player? And will you see success in what you're doing? And take responsibility when you make a mistake. Don't shift it to somebody else. And so that's why this book was put together primarily, in looking to see what took place in a small place. Several of you came from up in the Clemson area, the Spartanburg area, you from Virginia. Every small community has the same thing, that people who dedicate their lives to helping other people improve themselves. Given a little background on my parents, my mother was from, she grew up in the country in Horry County, Conway. And my daddy grew up in a little town called Oler, South Carolina. Well, at age 56, his father was shot and killed. And so my daddy went to Epworth Orphanage. And it was the old time at Epworth Orphanage. That when you say, what do you mean by old time? That meant that you simply work a half a day, you went to school a half a day. Well, he went to the orphanage, and later he went to live with an uncle in Barnwell, South Carolina, by the name of Arthur Baxter. And my daddy left there and went to Conway, and the first night in Conway, he slept under the printing press bench at the field newspaper in Conway, South Carolina, because he had a cousin there. Well, he met my mother at a square dance at Bucksport, okay? And Mama went home that night and told us, I said, I met the man I'm gonna marry. And so they got married, and I was born in Conway, South Carolina, a home delivery by Dr. Paul Sassa, all right? So when you talk about birth and different things taking place, I was a home-born baby. And so anyway, I started from there and went to the first grade. Then we moved to Georgetown, and that's when I entered the second grade over here. And it was quite an experience coming in. And one of the things in being the old school is this. I won't use the teacher's name, but the second grade teacher, you know, today in elementary schools, you've got a little bathroom for the students right in the classroom. Well, here in Georgetown, the bathroom for all the students in the elementary school, which is the auditorium over here, is downstairs. Well, I asked this particular teacher, I just had to go to the bathroom. She wouldn't let me go. Well, if you don't think I didn't flood that desk, I'll cook for you for a week. And not a student laughed at me in terms of what happened. And the thing about it, today, a mother would be up there on top of that teacher like a setting hen getting after her biddies. Mama never did go up there. But the thing that happened that impressed me, not a student laughed about what happened to me. And so when you talk about coming along and everything, I started the second grade upstairs, and I'll remember it to this day, and I'm 88, and I remember that as a second grader, what took place, see. And so when you talk about going with different teachers and different things, and when I was in the fifth grade, we had a lady by the name of Miss Hutto. Well, had a bunch of Army fellows coming through a thing. We all were standing outside, and she was standing outside and everything. And so you know how soldiers are. Say, who is that good-looking teacher up there? Said, she's our teacher. She's a great teacher, and she did a terrific job. So that's the thing about the attitude of the teachers then and now. And now, when you get the discipline in the classroom, the biggest problems they're having is with the cell phone. Can you imagine trying to go into a classroom and teach, and everybody's got to have their cell phone? And now you got to have some kind of rules and regulation, either put it in this bag or put it someplace so you don't start ringing. Hey, you gotta explain to the parents what you're trying to do. But anyway, so I started the second grade and finished here in 1952. Work. My daddy went to work with Mr. Down at the Mr. Mercer down at the local electrical place down on Front Street, and that's what brought us here. And he worked for him for a number of years, and then later, in fact, he helped lay the line going across the rivers over to the Baruch's area over there. And then later he went to work for the paper mill. And see, in working at the paper mill, he was an electrician, and it's fascinating when you talk about International Paper Company, when you talk about taking a pine tree and debarking it and chipping it and then digesting it. You say digest it, yeah, the chemicals are breaking it down, so you're making paper out of it. And it's quite a scene to see that pulp coming across the screen and going through the rollers, and then down at the end where the paper comes in, where they have to cut it and rewind it and everything, and it's quite a job. I never did want to go to the digester room. I was always down in the room where we had an overflow, it's called the overflow of pulp, where you'd have to take the hog and just take that wet pulp and stack it up. Then when it needed the pulp, you'd put it in the hog and put it back. Let me tell you how they knew the digester was full. Now this was really engineering, okay? They had an angle iron that they stuck down, and when they got to the top, that iron would go up and they'd say, well, it's full, we'll take it out and cap it, see? But I never did go to the capping room. That was just out of my bailiwick. I'm not mechanical. And I said, I don't want to get up in the digester room. But so that's what brought us to Georgetown originally. We lived in an apartment over on Fraser Street, then we lived in an apartment on High Market Street, And then later, I lived in a small house, which is still there, a historic thing by Dr. Dantzler, and tell you a story about what I learned from Dr. Dantzler. He said, son, you need to go barefooted to school sometimes. I said, why? He said, well, you won't get colds or get pneumonia. It'll get you tough, see? So I came to school that day barefooted, Miss Whitten's class. She said, son, have you gone crazy? I said, no, ma'am. So Dr. Dantzler said if I'd go barefooted, I would just get immune to colds and go home and get your shoes and come on back. so I had to walk all the way home, get on some shoes to come back up in the third grade over there. See, so all these little stories that come about, but that's what brought us to Georgetown originally. Yeah. The parades were fantastic because at that time when you had the scouts and different organizations, whoever it may be, with the parades and the bands, because at that time there was a firehouse right where the park is now. So, and there was a hotel right across from there, and you had the boats that were docked behind there that were coming from up north, or some people had boats that they lived on, a houseboat. In fact, one of our best running backs, Jules Sweat, lived on a houseboat. And how he ever got to Georgetown, South Carolina playing football, I will never know. But Jules left and went to Oklahoma when he graduated. Quite an athlete. But that's the thing I remember most about the earlier years of Georgetown, with the parades, with the Cub Scouts, the Boy Scouts, and the bands and everything just participate. It was just that community activity. Yes. I started playing football and baseball for Kay Richards when I was 12 years old. And to give you the background on Kay Richards and his family, I used this term the other day, and I said his family came from the old country. And they kind of looked at me and said, what do you mean by the old country? Well, his family was from over around either Syria or that particular area, or the Greek area. And so they came to the United States. Well, his daddy had a grocery store over there up from the mill, see. And Kay went to Clemson, and he was there, came out, went in the Navy, and then when he came back, he went to Presbyterian and finished. So when he finished Presbyterian, he came back to Georgetown. They took half the store and still made it a vegetable, canned goods, meat, and the other half was sporting goods. So he was really the beginning of the recreation department in Georgetown, South Carolina. Kay saw something in me that I didn't see. And I mean by that, we were running single wing or T formation, whatever formation he wanted to run, but I was playing fullback. He let me call the plays. So that was the beginning of learning how to call plays, see. And so when you say my trek in getting to the high school level, I went out for the high school weighing 125 pounds, and Coach McClendon said, and he was the head coach of the football team at that time, said, you go back and play for Kay another year. You're too small, you're too little. I said, fine. So I went back and played for Kay. And so that's what I meant by his giving me the opportunity to call plays. And I called plays from a midget team all the way through college. All right? It wasn't all this signaling in. And the only time we got a play in was when a halfback may go close to the coach and say, hey, tell him to run so-and-so. So, and given responsibility, you knew what was taking place, see. So I went back out for the varsity as a sophomore, and I was behind Landy Avant. Landy was a great quarterback, and he could throw that football. But I am convinced of this. Each of us are designed to be in a special place and a special time for the talents we have. Football was a push contest to begin with. It's a push contest now because you can help a runner across. Used to you couldn't do that, but you can now. Well, it went from just plain old rugged football to single wings to different formation, a tight T. But during the war years, there was a formation called the split T option offense. I was designed for the split T offense, okay? In Georgetown, South Carolina, and Newberry College, we could run the option and quick as good as any team in the country, particularly in the Southeast. And you say, well, what do you mean by that? Well, a split T option is the coach believes if you'll spread out, get the gaps, and get the halfback 3 steps off the line, and you can get down the line, you're going to hand off on a quickie and get that hole before, bam, you got 3 yards. See, on the option play, you coming down the line and you're looking at the man on the end of the line. Now, as an end on the end of the line, several things are going to happen. He's going to come straight to you and tear you up, or you can do that little peacock dance and everything else, but you got to look at the legs. Your legs carry your body. And that's why I'm saying that by looking at the person coming to you, you better get ready. If he's running hard, you better duck that shoulder. And you say, well, what'd you do after that? I learned how to pitch the ball by turning your arms and letting it float out at a 45-degree angle so the back could receive the ball and not be looking at it just going up and down. And so anyway, that's why I'm saying each of us is designed, and I was designed to be playing a split T option quarterback, because look at those short fingers. My coach in college said, Danny, you can't throw. He made me so mad one day. He said, just throw it over the wall. I tried to throw it over the wall, and it spun off and hit the end going down the side. Everybody broke down and laughed. See? So you have all kinds of stories that take place. And so that's how the football began there in college. And when I got out, I taught and coached at Rock Hill High School, Spartanburg, went to graduate school, came back to Sherrill, and ended up coaching at Myrtle Beach, South Carolina. Competed against the Gators, okay? And we had a fun night one night. I'll tell you about that a little later. But that's how the story started, with a young man by the name of Kay Richards, a wonderful, even-keeled type individual. In fact, he coached with Joe Isaac in the latter part of Joe's coaching career at Winyah High School. And you know what he called? Georgetown was on the 3-yard line, 97 yards to go that away. And Joe said, well, Kay, what would you run? He said, triple reverse. Who's ever heard of running a triple reverse on the 3-yard line with 97 yards? They scored a touchdown, okay? And so when you get into the knowledge of what to do the unexpected, that's what he was about. And he was a good man. Well, you know, naturally the holidays with the fireworks and everything like that going on, and one of the best experiences we had when Landy and those finished in 1949, Coach Cecil Woolbright came to town, and he played football at the University of South Carolina. And he came to Georgetown to coach for $2,800 a year. He made extra money by teaching veterans at night to supplement his income. Well, the first year we had a good record. We had an 8-2 record, but I was playing defense, and we went to play Orangeburg, and I was lost on defense. And Coach Wilbright was the type of person that did not want to embarrass you. He said, I need you on offense. You're going to stay on offense. I'm taking you off of defense. He knew I was lost. And so we ended up with about an 8-2 record. But one of the most interesting games towards our senior year, our first 5 ball games were played on the road. He took us up to Greenwood to play Pinky Bab and the Greenwood Emeralds. And strong team, okay? We rode, got on the bus at 8 o'clock here, had lunch at the Villa Tronco in Columbia, went on up to Greenwood and put our equipment in and went to see a movie. And guess what we had for a pregame meal? Hot tea and honey and toast. That was our pregame meal, okay? And so playing Pinky Bab up there, and they had a Quonset where they were on one side and we were on the other. Well, we got beat that night, 33-13, and I laid the ball on the ground several times. And H.B. Brewton got hurt, and he rode back to Georgetown lying on the floor because his back was hurt. So we got back to Georgetown after getting whipped up there about 2:30, 3 o'clock in the morning. So our first 5 ball games were on the road, and after the end of the 5 ball games, we were 3-1-1. But the most interesting part about that season was this. Today you can't do it. I could do it, we could do it back then. I had the flu on Friday, and I sent word that I said, Coach, I won't be in school today. I said, I got the flu, but I'll be at the bus at 3:30. Well, we went up to Sumter and we got beat. Got beat 7-6. So we're coming to play Conway Thanksgiving Eve on Wednesday night in Conway. I practice on Monday and Tuesday, just a walk around, what we're going to do. But we went to Conway. They had not built their new facilities and all this kind of thing. They had us under the gym, cold as blue blazes. I mean, it was cold. No heat, under the gym. We looked like the Green Bay Packers, except we were dressed in all red, okay? Red helmets, red jerseys, pants, red capes, and we came out to play the Conway Tigers. Well, for some reason, they knew everything that we were doing that night. They had scouted us. I found out later, they had scouted us every ball game. The right halfback, if we were going to go straight through, would get down. If he's going to go left, he would stand up. Well, we didn't know that at the time, but at the half, we were losing 7-6. And we went back down to the dungeon, and it was cold. I heard the best halftime talk and what we had to do of any that's ever been given. The coach said 7 words, Coach Wilbright. If you're going to win tonight, you got to play. He left. Everybody left, just us sitting there. And everybody looked around and said, all right, if we're going to win tonight, we got to get down, get off, and get on the snap and get to going and everything. So sure enough, we got down, and when you talked about Philip Wilkerson, we got a first down. Then we had a counter play, meaning faking to the halfback, giving to the fullback. Philip was running down just wide open down the middle of the field. He made one cardinal mistake. He looked over his shoulder to see who was coming. It was O'Neal Cannon. O'Neal Cannon was tough as a lighter knot, okay? He drove him into the ground, bam, on the 5-yard line, and we scored. And Phil told me years later, he said, and even probably later the game and everything, he said, Danny, I don't remember a thing. I was playing on the days most of the time after that. But that was the most unusual night that I had ever experienced in my life, in that we were playing with a yellow football. Lindsey Pierce went to Todd Moore in Columbia. I want a yellow football against that dark red. I don't want that brown color. I want a yellow football. Well, we were running a play towards the gym, and I run an option play to the right. And suddenly, after I pitch out, my hand is sliding along the ground, and I feel a sting. I get up, and I got a nail driven through my hand. And I said, oh, my Lord. So I go outside, go to the sideline, and I said, Coach, you got to take this out. Oh, goodness, pull it out. So they pulled it out. Dr. Armstrong, the surgeon, came out and said, don't worry about it. Said, when it's over with, I'll take him to the emergency room. We'll get it taken care of. So they put my thiolate on it with a bandage. Now, if you don't think I didn't bleed on that football the rest of the ball game, I'll cook for you for a week, okay? So that yellow football turned red. And so after playing that ball game, and we beat them 28-13, we beat Conway 13 years straight. And later, when Buddy Sassler was a senior, they beat Georgetown, and it was a 10-year run for Conway beating Georgetown. But that was a great night, because after the game, we went to Red's on the Hill across the water in Conway and had the best chicken dinner we have ever eaten, because we just whipped them Conway Tigers. And Lars Rim bought cigars for everybody, and the smoke was just rolling out of that bus coming back to Georgetown from Conway, because we'd whipped the Conway Tigers over there. So that was the thing about going there. And so when you say, how did you get from here in Georgetown to Newberry? Well, Keith Harper did take me down to the Citadel, and they talked with me about the Citadel. But the thing that I didn't quite enjoy when I went down there, you got to brace at your meals, see? And I said, I like to kind of relax when I'm eating meals. Well, I learned later from some of the athletes from Citadel, said, oh, listen, you have a training table during the season, but if you're a freshman, you're going to brace, see? Well, anyway, as everything was put together, I went to Newberry College and never regretted, because it was a great ride and had a wonderful time. So that's basically how that was. And I got a degree in education with a minor in science and math, and started out in the teaching field and enjoyed every bit of it. Well, again, when you're in college and you have your practice teaching, all these students, they want to try you. See, here you are, a college student, and the teacher, and it's a little tough, I'm going to be honest with you, because the teacher whose class you're teaching is sitting in there and grading you in terms of being a part of your getting certified and all that. And it makes you a little nervous when somebody else is, who it's her class or his class, and they kind of grading you, what kind of grades you might make, see. So you get certified, and so from graduating from there, as I say, I went to Rock Hill High School my first year and taught general science and biology. Now, the biology teacher had all the labs and all that. I just had desk. So I had to keep up about a week ahead of time from all the students to stay ahead of them with the biology language and general science, and I had no problem with that, see. So I went, as I say, from Rock Hill to Spartanburg. Physical education I taught up there. And we had a great physical education department where everything was offered to the students, from we had archery to trampoline to square dancing to just a spread of activities for the students as a senior high school 10 through 12, see. And so did that at Spartanburg, and then when I went to graduate school, I was fortunate enough to have some assistantship at University of North Carolina in the physical education department. And one of the things I found out now, I called square dances at Spartanburg. Well, I called a square dance for the Baptist Student Union at Chapel Hill. They invited me to come and call a square dance at Chapel Hill, and Dean Smith was there, okay? And I knew right then that night, Dean Smith, he was the assistant to Frank McGuire. He was going to be a successful coach. And you say, well, how did you know that? Well, there was this young black student who was standing off to the side, and he reached out and grabbed him by the hand and got him in that circle. I knew right then that Dean Smith knew about human beings and how to relate to people. And so he came over and we spoke and had a great time talking about the dance and everything. I got paid $25, by the way, to call that square dance. And so it was a good time. And so I left from there after coming out and went to Cheraw, South Carolina. And again, in Cheraw, I was teaching math and general science and athletic director. It's an interesting thing how everything today is finished when it started. You have to know where you've come from to know where you're going. You know how we took up tickets in Cheraw, South Carolina? Had a cigar box with the tickets. They sold the tickets at 25 cents or 50 cents for adults. And one night we were playing a game, and just before kickoff, it's about 7:45, it started pouring down rain. And the guy that was in charge of tickets came over and said, Danny, you going to play tonight? I said, have you got the money in the box? He said, yeah. I said, close it up. We're going to play at 8 o'clock, regardless of what kind of weather we got. There is absolutely no way he could have ended up with the same amount of money in terms of taking it in and giving money back to somebody. But we played at 8 o'clock that night. So that's been my trek through that. And when I was in Myrtle Beach, after being in athletics, I went to work for the county with Title I. And I know y'all are familiar with what you call Title I. And so I worked with Overy County for 3 years in the Title I program, which was just starting because integration was just starting. And they took the money and upgraded the black schools with the buildings and facilities and books and everything else, see. And so later I went to work with the State Department of Education in Columbia with a friend who was the, quote, Title I director. And then after he left to go someplace to become a superintendent of education, I became Title I coordinator with the state of South Carolina for about 3 years. And at age 40, the School Boards Association, I did some work with them and some other things. I went with the Equitable in the life insurance business at age 40 and stayed with them for 37 years. And I learned this from a corporation. It ain't what you did for me yesterday. It's what you're going to do for me tomorrow. And so you learn all these things about everything. So today, in looking at facilities, everybody expects everything to be finished, ready to go. And you have to know where you come from to know where you're going. Some people say you may have a two-track mind. Okay, I have a one-track mind. I can only concentrate on one thing at a time. And that simply means this. My mother and daddy would drive from Georgetown to Newberry to see me play. Well, if you're courting, so forth, you trying to balance going to school, doing all this, and football on Saturdays and that kind of thing. Well, I met my wife early. She came to Georgetown. Her name was Mary Ann Mayfield. She went by Sis Mayfield. I met her earlier, And so when football season, I would call her. And back then, see, everybody's got cell phones now. The phones back then were in the middle of the dormitory and said, hey, sis, Danny's calling you. You want to take this call? And she'd say yes. So that's so we'd see each other in the spring of the year. And so when she graduated from Winthrop, and she was my stabilizing force, okay? She's a lot smarter than me. She helped me get through graduate school. She did it on just a little typewriter that's hunt and peck and that kind of thing, no computer. And so I met her, and we got married a year after. She wanted me to go to Florida to coach flag football. I said, sis, there is absolutely no way I'm going to Florida to coach flag football. I said, I know people in South Carolina. I'm going to stay here. So we got married, and then we started from there. And that's what I talk about, being a one-track mind, see, in terms of trying to balance things, because some people were different than me in that respect. That's fine, but I could only operate in terms of seeing family and playing and doing this kind of thing. And so we got married, and we have 3 children. Michael Danley, Bobby Mayfield, who is Field, our middle child, then Dale Brabham. We have 3. And so it's been a good journey. Prior to that, and meeting you and the other folks here at the library, there were 3 things that should have been in the library, which are in the library. One is the book written by Coach William E. Dufford, A Trip Through the Asylum. He wrote about the integration of the high schools in Sumter, Edmonds, and Lincoln to make Sumter High School. So bringing that book here, and then Doug Corkin, who played football with me here, has sketches of Bluffton, a tremendous individual. And then Frank Pusey, who I played with, who went to Wofford, there was an article in the Wofford Alumni Magazine about his flying Air Force One. So I got him to sign a copy and brought that here. And that's when I was introduced to y'all about having these volumes here and doing that. And the very day that I walked in to the Georgetown County Library, I could see all the activity with everybody having a job, everybody doing a job, enjoying what they were doing, and you were working as a team. And that's why I came back to this thing about you're successful is when everybody is pulling the oars to make it a successful team effort in having activities for the public. I had heard the name Bob Perrin when I was here as a student. Coach McClendon is an icon, but I knew the name Bob Perrin, and it said Bob Perrin. Well, that kind of tweaked the mind a little bit to say, hey, when did football actually get started here and what took place? Well, and just doing some research with y'all having everything on film, and it's a wonderful thing you've done for the city, and you had that opportunity to go to London from Georgetown, South Carolina, to speak to the biggest library in the world in London about what's taking place in a small town. With all the facts that were here, who was the first coach and what took place? Well, Bob Perrin was an outstanding student at Presbyterian College, a leader. He was from Union. His daddy was a doctor. And so when he left Presbyterian, he went to Harvard to get a graduate degree. And then he came to Georgetown and coached here from the 30s to 1940. And so some of the records aren't quite clear, but he was a leader. Well, he wasn't the first certified coach. Buck Sweat was the first certified coach who played at Wofford in baseball and football, and he met Superintendent Bynum over at Paulus Island. Well, Buck Sweat had to, now think about this, had the title of coach, acting coach now for 5 years. They never did take acting off. He was an acting coach for 5 years. And so he decided to leave and went to work for the paper mill, the paper over there, and met a young lady here and married, made his home here. Well, and going back even further than that, football actually started in 1922 in Georgetown, South Carolina, from the records that y'all have from the Georgetown Times and other things that are there that took place. 1922, they played 4 ball games. You said 4, who did they play? They only played King Street and Conway, but they played them twice. And they split, and they were 50-50. It was a 500 season, the very first. Conway was known as the Conway Warriors first, and later they were changed to Tigers. Well, you know how they maneuvered and moved about? They rode in cars to King Street. They rode the train to Conway to play the Comanches. And so out of that first season, it was a split 2-2. So the first records were unclear. And so those were the coaches certified to begin with. And they weren't on the faculty, they were volunteers, but they did a great job. And Georgetown did play in a playoff, and they went District 7 in Hartsville, South Carolina, in Kellytown, which was the field that was shared with the black team up there. And it's the same place we played when I was in high school. So everything started slowly about that period of time and coming along and moving in that direction. Now, Dan Lameth came here in 1941 and only stayed 1 year after Bob Perrin left to go to service. And by the way, I'd like to mention this. When you talk about a leader, he was wounded in the war over there, and he is buried in Italy. And so when you get into Dan Lameth coming in 1941, he was here for 1 year. He went into service, and Ed McClendon came in here in 42, and he won more ball games than anyone during that period of time. Had some great ball clubs, and people turned out to see us play. And so when after the war, Dan Lameth came back and wanted to be the football coach. Well, hey, you're not going to take Ed McClendon off, so Dan Lameth became an elementary principal. And was here and did a wonderful job, and later he left and went on to other areas and everything. And Coach McClendon was here for that period of time and went to Charleston. Charleston was not, let me use my word, kind to Coach McClendon in this basis. He was coaching the Charleston Bantams. Well, how can you take 3 different schools with Charleston High School, vocational, Murray Vocational, and Rivers, and see the students only 2.5 hours a day and bring them together? So he had a tough time down there as far as winning records. Some good players, but it wasn't the same thing that they had here. Left from Charleston and went to Mullins. In the very first year in Mullins, South Carolina, he won the state Class B championship. And so what tweaked my mind to say, hey, if it started in 22 and somebody burned the school down in 1981, what took place during that 60-year span that would show what took place? So with your help and my daughter's help and everybody's help from a team effort, because it took about 11 folks, I could name them off, that put this together so that it is called the Georgetown Gators of Winyah High School. Some people say, well, where did the Block G come from? Well, if you go back and check the Georgetown Times, they were called the Georgetown Gators at different times. So the G really stands for Georgetown and Gators, not just Gators. It's like now, it was Winyah School tax district number 5, I think it is. Well, they took the Winyah off, and the tax district is still number 5. So it gave it a title. And looking at it, we included everybody from teams, records, what did it meant playing here, what did you learn in playing that you could take later in life that has helped you. And it's just amazing the pattern that's there about friendship, about work ethics that they took later in life, and it helped them become a better person. Did we try to exclude people? Absolutely not. Did we have people who we asked to respond? Did not respond. So you got to come to what I call a ending point to get the thing finished and put together. So it's been a real joy in putting this book together, because as long as the library is here, and that's sort of what, I was sitting in the car before I came in and amazed to look at the street, because right out here where the parking lot is where the stands were. Right here where the library sits, it was the playing field. And so you look right over here, you got a courthouse, and I can almost remember the goalpost lining up with the elementary school over here. You could see the goalpost lining up with the doors there. The concession stand, you know, you go to a lot of places, say, well, you got hot dogs and drinks. No, they had peanuts and drinks over here. Would take the Coca-Cola signs and made a square, so you go and get a Coke and some peanuts or whatever. And the programs were selling for like 10 cents. And invariably, and I checked this out, you follow the pattern that was set the year before, all the programs did not put a year on the end of it. In 1952, 1951, there was no year there. Even down in later years, there was no year there. And nobody ever called that to my attention in editing the thing to say, hey, you need to put a year down there. And so you had to kind of figure out some things, because at the time, everybody knew it was 1951, but it wasn't printed. And so you talk about having good editing to say, hey, you need to add a year or do this. That's what makes it good about the library, and saying, hey, if we're going to put this together, you need to check your I's, the dotted, and the T's are crossed, and you got your commas, and make sure you got a year when it was done, because time passes so quickly. Say, now when did we do that? So you got to document it. But this has been a real joy in putting it together and getting permission and giving everybody credit, because I could not have done it without you and the other folks at the library, and especially Phil and the communication you all had. And again, in looking at the publishing company in Columbia, who did a tremendous job for us and got the feel of what we wanted to do in doing this. The cover on this was done by Doug Corkin, and his name is right there, and you can see it. I said, Doug, draw me a wild-looking gator that we can put on the front cover. And so this is a special drawing that he made on this, and it's got his name there, and that's why it just seemed to fit the Georgetown Gators of Winyah High School, gathering the Gators from 22 to 82. Because even though the school was burned in 81, the school year ended in 82. So it just kind of fit together that you had the 81 season when it closed out. And going back and reading the Times, it was quite a celebration, I want to call it, the last night when Howard High School played the Georgetown Gators over the ACL ballpark, when they came together, had a wonderful night, and then they came together the next year and had a wonderful season. Now, the one thing I want to give credit to somebody, and I'd say the city of Georgetown, because with the ACL ballpark, and it's called the Mike Johnson Ballpark now, they moved the bleachers for 19 years every spring for baseball and stored them and brought them back out for football, because when I was coaching at Myrtle Beach High School, I was the visitor at the second base place, and the home team was on the other side. So think about that now. For 19 years, tearing down bleachers and taking them and storing them and having to set them up for the next year. That's why everybody expects, well, we got a nice stadium now. We got all this seating. We got a press box. We got a PA system. We got a track. We got all this. You got to know where you came from to know where you're going. And so anyway, I want to congratulate the city of Georgetown for taking their manpower to set that up for 19 years and doing that. In fact, if you look at it and look at the years, of 60 years, Georgetown played more than 50% of their games at the ACL ballpark, because that's where they started playing. They didn't start playing out here till 1938. Lights came on in 1939. And so when J.C. Hudson became head coach, he wanted to go back over there. So more than 50% of the games in Georgetown have been played in the ballpark over there. Which has been the baseball park now, but it was baseball, football back then. I just thank all of you here at this library, whatever job you've got, for what you do for the public in Georgetown County as well as the state. And I come back to this, that all the work that is being done, sometimes some politicians or individuals at different levels don't understand and have maybe never visited a library to see exactly what you do, and want to take pennies away from you when you're trying to educate the public, whatever it is, from a book to a computer to helping them read or how to find information. It's knowledge that you can never erase.